At 14, Joseph Smith claimed he had seen God. Then came an angel. Then a buried record said to contain an ancient history of the Americas. But how did one teenager's extraordinary claims become a church followed by thousands? The answer begins with what happened next. In the 1820s, Western New York was a place of intense religious upheaval. Preachers traveled from town to town. Churches competed for converts, while people questioned scripture, salvation, and whether Christianity had lost something from its earliest days. The region became known as the Burned-Over District because repeated revivals had filled communities with religious fervor. The Second Great Awakening pushed faith beyond church walls and into everyday life. Some followed established denominations. Others began asking a more radical question. What if Christianity needed to be restored? It was into this atmosphere that a young Joseph Smith emerged. He would eventually claim that God had chosen him for something far greater than himself. But his story did not begin with a church. It began with a vision. Chapter 1. The Vision. In 1820, according to Joseph Smith's later accounts, a 14-year-old Smith went into a wooded area near his home in western New York to pray. He was living in a world filled with competing religious voices. Different churches offered different answers. Preachers argued over scripture and salvation. And for a young person trying to decide what to believe, the question could feel impossible to settle. According to his later accounts, Smith had become particularly concerned about which church was right. He turned to the Bible for guidance. But the more he searched, the more fundamental the question became. If the churches disagreed, which one had the truth? He said he was searching for answers about religion. Then came the claim that would change everything. Smith reported that he saw God the Father and Jesus Christ. The experience would later become known as the first vision. But there is an important distinction between the event itself and the historical record surrounding it. Smith left several accounts of the experience at different points in his life. Those accounts differ in some details. The central claim, however, was that he had experienced a divine manifestation and received instructions concerning the religious world around him. According to his account, he was told not to join the existing Christian denominations because they were in error. For Smith, this was not simply an answer to a personal question. It pointed towards something much larger. If the existing churches were wrong, where was the original authority? And if that authority had been lost, could it return? The implication was enormous. If Smith's account was true, Christianity had not simply divided into competing churches. Something had been lost, and something would have to be restored. But nothing resembling a new church existed yet. There was no Book of Mormon, no organized movement, no network of followers, no institution capable of carrying the claim beyond Smith himself. For the moment, everything rested on the testimony of one young man. Then, 3 years later, Smith reported another encounter. This time, he said the visitor was an angel named Moroni. And Moroni, according to Smith, told him about an ancient record buried in the earth. That record would change the story completely. Chapter 2. The Plates. Smith said the record was written on metal plates and buried near the area where he lived in New York. According to his later accounts, the plates were buried in a hill near the present-day Manchester, New York area. The claim was extraordinary. Smith was no longer speaking only about a vision. He was now describing a physical object hidden beneath the ground. An ancient record. A record that, according to his account, had survived for centuries before reaching him. Smith reported receiving instructions about the plates beginning in 1823. He said the angel Moroni appeared to him and told him about the record and the responsibility associated with it. But the plates were not immediately placed in his hands. According to his account, he had to wait. He returned to the location over a period of years, following the instructions he said he had received. But he did not immediately take them. According to his account, he returned to the location repeatedly before finally obtaining them in 1827. That moment transformed the nature of his claim. There was now, according to Smith, something tangible behind the story. A set of plates that he said contained an ancient history, but possessing the record created another problem. Someone had to translate it, and Smith claimed that responsibility belonged to him. Now the stakes were different. Smith was no longer simply claiming possession of an ancient record. He said the plates contained the history of ancient peoples who had lived in the Americas, and he claimed he had been chosen to translate them. The task would take years. The translation process involved scribes who recorded Smith's dictation, including Oliver Cowdery and others. Smith also described using instruments with spiritual significance during the process. The work eventually produced a manuscript that could be taken beyond the small circle surrounding him. What had begun as a reported encounter with an angel was becoming something that could be printed, distributed, and read by people who had never met Joseph Smith. The result was a book that would become the foundation of the new movement. It was called the Book of Mormon, but publishing it was only the beginning. Because once the book appeared, Smith faced a much bigger question. What happens when people begin to believe the messenger? This documentary is based on historical records and widely documented sources. Some events, particularly visions and divine encounters, are presented as Joseph Smith and his followers reported them. Where accounts differ, those differences are acknowledged. The purpose is to present the history objectively, without promoting or discrediting religious beliefs. Chapter 3. A book becomes a movement. In March 1830, the Book of Mormon was published. The printing took place in Palmyra, New York, turning Smith's religious claims into a physical volume that could travel far beyond the communities where they began. The book presented itself as an ancient record of peoples in the Americas. Its narrative described migrations, conflicts, religious struggles, and the rise and fall of societies. At its center was a claim that reached directly into Christian history. The book described the resurrected Jesus, Christ appearing to people in the Americas. For Smith and his followers, the book was not simply another religious publication. It was presented as evidence that revelation had continued and that a restoration was underway. That made the book more than a text. It became a foundation for a new religious identity. The message was now public. The claims were no longer confined to private visions or whispered conversations. There was a physical book, there were followers, and there was a movement taking shape. But a movement needed structure. A book could communicate an idea. It could gather believers, but it could not, by itself, create an organized church. That required leadership, authority, and a community willing to act on the message. On April 6, 1830, Smith and a small group of followers formally organized a church in Fayette, New York. The organization was initially called the Church of Christ. The gathering was small, but the decision was significant. The movement now had an institution, a beginning date, a recognized body of followers, and a leader claiming divine authority. The small gathering marked a major turning point. What had begun with one young man's reported visions had become an organized religious body. But organization created a new question. Where did this church get its authority? Smith and his followers claimed that the authority had not been created by them. They claimed it had been restored. And Smith's followers believed something even larger was happening. They claimed that divine authority lost from the early Christian church had been restored through heavenly messengers. According to these accounts, John the Baptist appeared to Smith and Oliver Cowdery. The claim went beyond personal revelation. It provided the movement with an explanation for why its leaders believed they possessed authority to perform religious ordinances and organize a restored church. Later, they reported that Peter, James, and John appeared to them as well. The movement was no longer simply asking people to believe a new book. It was claiming to restore the authority of the original Christian church. That claim would attract converts. It would also attract opposition. Chapter 4. The movement leaves New York. The new church began spreading beyond its birthplace. What had started among a small circle in western New York was beginning to move outward. Followers carried the new message into other communities. New converts joined. And with every new follower, the movement became less like a local religious experiment and more like an expanding organization. But growth brought new problems. Local skepticism increased. Religious opposition intensified. The movement's claims challenged established religious assumptions. Its leaders claimed continuing revelation. Its followers believed they were participating in a restoration of Christianity. And as their numbers increased, their presence became more visible, and the movement began looking beyond western New York. By early 1831, Smith and many of his followers had relocated their headquarters to Kirtland, Ohio. The move changed the scale of the movement. Kirtland provided a new center from which the church could organize its growing membership and religious activities. The relocation also brought the movement into contact with new communities and new converts. Among those who became associated with the movement was Sidney Rigdon, a prominent preacher and religious reformer. His arrival strengthened the movement's leadership and helped accelerate its growth. But Kirtland was only part of the story. At the same time, Missouri became increasingly important. Followers established a significant settlement in Jackson County, Missouri, and the region became central to the movement's developing vision for the future. By 1831, Joseph Smith and other leaders were traveling between emerging centers of the movement. The geography of the church was changing. New York had been the birthplace. Ohio was becoming a major headquarters. Missouri was becoming another crucial destination. The movement was no longer defined by one small community. It was becoming a network of settlements bound together by a common religious vision. Then another major figure entered the story. Sidney Rigdon, a prominent religious reformer and preacher, joined the movement and became one of Smith's important associates. Rigdon's arrival mattered because he was already known as a powerful religious speaker. His conversion brought experience, influence, and additional momentum to a movement still in its early stages. The movement was gaining people. It was gaining organization, and it was gaining a clearer sense of destiny. But there was a problem. Expansion did not guarantee acceptance. The more the movement grew, the more its communities became visible. And the more visible they became, the more difficult it was to separate religious disagreement from social and political tension. The movement's growth was creating new communities. Those communities were creating new pressures, and the pressures would soon force difficult choices. The more the movement expanded, the more its presence collided with the communities around it. Religious disagreement was becoming social conflict. Migration was becoming necessary. And the small movement born in New York was beginning a pattern that would define much of its early history. Move, rebuild, grow, and confront resistance again. Closing reflection. The beginning of Mormonism shows how quickly an idea can become an institution. Joseph Smith's movement began with extraordinary religious claims made by a young man in a deeply divided religious environment. Within a few years, those claims had produced a book, a church, followers, and new communities. What began as a question about which church was true had become a movement claiming that something much larger had been restored. And the transformation did not happen in one moment. It happened through a series of claims, decisions, followers, migrations, and conflicts. History often changes this way, not because everyone agrees, but because enough people believe strongly enough to act. Once people organize around an idea, that idea can move beyond its original creator. It can shape communities. It can influence decisions. It can survive opposition. And it can create consequences that nobody at the beginning could fully predict. And once belief becomes organized, it can survive opposition, reshape communities, and create consequences far beyond the moment when it began. The story of Mormonism was only beginning, and the movement was about to enter a much more turbulent chapter. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to Mode Hub Tales as we uncover the forgotten histories, hidden cultures, and untold stories that shaped our world. Because history doesn't disappear, it waits to be remembered.